welcome to our deep dive into Asif Omar's novel, Angel.
Ah, Angel.
Now, you mentioned wanting to really understand the core themes and plot of this book.
Right.
And from what I can tell, it's this fascinating mix of political intrigue, social commentary, and just a touch of, I don't know, like the fantastical, all set against this backdrop of Afghan culture.
Absolutely. And Omar, he doesn't waste any time pulling you in.
Oh, really?
The opening scene is pure chaos, smoke-filled streets of Kabul.
Whoa.
Injured people everywhere.
Wow.
And in the middle of it all, there's this young woman dancing, almost oblivious to the turmoil all around her.
Okay, that image alone, that's captivating.
Yeah.
It's like a snapshot of the energy and tension that permeates the entire story.
It's exactly. Yeah. And then we meet our narrator, who, interestingly enough, remains unnamed throughout the novel.
Oh, interesting.
And he's immediately drawn to this charismatic figure, Haroon, who's deeply involved in political activism.
It's like Haroon embodies this hope for a new Afghanistan, at least initially, right?
At least at first, yeah.
The narrator is totally in awe of him.
Mm-hmm.
But then things start to get complicated, don't they?
They do, you see. The narrator's admiration for Haroon, it starts to crack as he witnesses the lengths that Haroon's willing to go to to achieve his goals.
Mm-hmm.
There are these morally questionable decisions.
Oh, no.
Power plays, even hints of ruthlessness.
Really?
It makes you question if the ends justify the means.
Right.
Especially in a society grappling with such upheaval.
This is where I find Omar's writing so brilliant.
Yeah.
He doesn't shy away from moral ambiguity.
Right.
He forces you, the reader, to wrestle with these difficult questions right alongside the narrator.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a story. It's an experience.
Absolutely.
And just when you think you're starting to understand this complex relationship between the narrator and Haroon, Omar introduces Zarl.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Zarl is...
She's a force of nature.
Okay.
She's mysterious, captivating, and possesses these.
Yeah.
Let's call them unique abilities.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit.
Yeah.
We're talking about magical realism here, right?
Precisely.
Zarl can see glimpses of the future.
Mm-hmm.
She has this deep understanding of people's motivations.
Yeah.
And she influences the narrator in ways that he can't quite grasp.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's what's fascinating. Omar doesn't use magical realism simply for, shock value.
Oh,
It's woven into the narrative in a way that reflects Afghan culture and spirituality.
Interesting.
Think of the Sufi tradition,
Okay.
where the line between the physical and spiritual world can be, blurred.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's not just fantasy thrown in for fun. It adds another layer of depth to the story and forces you to think about the role of destiny
Absolutely.
and free will.
Is Zarl a manifestation of fate guiding the narrator? Or does he still have the power to choose his own path despite her influence?
Yeah, those are good questions.
These are the questions Omar leaves us pondering.
And let's not forget the backdrop against which all of this is happening.
Right.
Afghanistan in a state of political and social turmoil.
Uh-huh.
How does Omar weave this into the story without...
Well, he does it masterfully.
Yeah.
He uses vivid imagery and symbolism.
Okay.
For example, there are scenes of protests,
Mm-hmm.
clashes between secular and religious groups.
Oh, wow.
And this constant sense of unrest simmering beneath the surface. It's like the city itself becomes a character, reflecting the internal struggles of the people who inhabit it.
And this tension between tradition and modernity, that's
absolutely.
something that really jumps out at you, right?
Yeah, you have characters like Haroon who represent a more progressive viewpoint.
Uh-huh.
And then you have figures like Pir Sahib.
Okay.
Can you tell us a bit more about him?
Yeah. Who is Pir Sahib?
Pir Sahib is fascinating because he represents traditional values and spirituality. Yeah. He becomes a mentor to the narrator, offering guidance and wisdom, rooted in Afghan customs and religious beliefs.
So he's a stark contrast to Haroon.
He's a stark contrast to Haroon.
Okay.
And their differing approaches to social change highlight the complexities of navigating tradition and progress.
So we have this fascinating triangle.
Yeah.
The narrator caught between Haroon's ambition, Zarl's enigmatic influence, and Pir Sahib's traditional wisdom.
Right.
That's already a recipe for a gripping story.
It is.
And at the heart of it all lies this central conflict. Haroon's relentless pursuit of power versus the narrator's growing desire for a just and peaceful society.
Absolutely.
This is where those morally ambiguous situations we talked about earlier come into play. Right?
Exactly.
The narrator is forced to witness the consequences of Haroon's actions. And he starts to question everything he once believed in.
Yeah.
It's a real test of his loyalty and his own sense of morality.
Right. And it's this struggle, this internal conflict within the narrator that propels the story forward and keeps you, the reader, completely engrossed in Omar's world. And it's not just the narrator's personal struggle that Omar explores. The novel also delves into these broader themes of betrayal, both on like a personal and a societal level.
Oh, absolutely. It's like trust is this fragile thread running through the whole story, constantly being tested and often breaking under the weight of ambition and political maneuvering.
Take the narrator's relationship with Haroon. For example, the disillusionment he feels when he realizes Haroon is willing to exploit others to achieve his political goals. That's a key turning point in the novel. It raises all these questions about the nature of leadership and the compromises people make in the pursuit of power.
And what's so interesting is that this theme of betrayal isn't limited to individual characters.
Right.
It extends to the very ideals that are supposed to be shaping a new Afghanistan.
Exactly. Omar highlights the broken promises of those in power.
Wow.
The corruption that seems to seep into, like, every aspect of society, and the cyclical violence that traps the nation in a state of perpetual conflict.
It makes you question whether real progress is even possible amidst such deep-seated issues.
Right.
It's heartbreaking, but it's also incredibly thought-provoking.
Yeah.
Omar isn't afraid to show the harsh realities of Afghanistan, both past and present.
You mentioned earlier that the novel is set against the backdrop of the Afghan war and its aftermath.
Right.
How does Omar portray the impact of this conflict on the characters and their sense of identity?
That's a great question.
He does it with this remarkable blend of sensitivity and honesty.
Okay.
You see families torn apart.
Oh, wow.
Communities struggling to rebuild. And individuals grappling with the trauma and displacement that war leaves in its wake. But there's also this incredible resilience that shines through.
Really?
Omar captures the spirit of the Afghan people, their determination to survive, to adapt, and to find moments of joy even in the darkest of times.
That resonates with me deeply. It's a reminder that even in the midst of chaos and suffering, the human spirit has this incredible capacity for hope and renewal.
Absolutely.
And within this context of war and its aftermath, you also see these questions of identity emerge, right? How do the characters grapple with who they are in a society undergoing such radical transformation?
It's fascinating to see how Omar tackles this. You have characters who are like torn between tradition and modernity, between the pull of Western influence and the deep-rooted customs and beliefs of Afghan culture.
Wow.
It's a tension that plays out in their choices, their relationships, even like the way they dress and speak.
That's something that so many cultures grapple with, this idea of finding your place in a rapidly changing world.
And what's interesting is how Omar reflects this internal conflict through the very structure of the novel.
Oh, how so?
He doesn't follow a linear timeline.
Okay.
Instead, he jumps back and forth in time, shifting perspectives, almost like piecing together a fragmented memory.
Interesting.
It mirrors the fractured nature of Afghan society itself.
Right.
And it forces you, the reader, to actively engage with the story, to connect the dots and make sense of this non-linear narrative.
It's not passive reading. It's an active participation in piecing together the puzzle Omar presents.
Right.
And speaking of puzzles, Zarl is a character who remains enigmatic throughout the story.
Yeah.
We've touched upon her unique abilities, but what about her role in the broader narrative?
She's a fascinating character because she operates on so many levels.
Okay.
She's a seer, offering glimpses into the future.
It's a guide, subtly influencing the narrator's path.
Right.
And she's also like a source of temptation, challenging his beliefs and pushing him outside his comfort zone.
It's like she embodies this mystical, almost spiritual element that's deeply ingrained in Afghan culture.
Absolutely.
But her motives remain shrouded in mystery.
Right.
You're constantly trying to figure out what Zarel's endgame is, what she ultimately wants from the narrator.
Exactly. And that ambiguity is intentional.
Okay.
Omar uses Zarel to explore the themes of destiny versus free will.
Oh, interesting.
If she can see the future, does that mean the narrator's path is predetermined?
Right.
Or does he still have agency, the ability to make his own choices despite her influence?
That tension between fate and free will is something I find particularly intriguing.
Yeah.
It's like Omar is suggesting that perhaps both forces are at play, shaping our lives in ways we may not fully understand. And this tension only intensifies when the political situation in Kabul reaches a boiling point. Oh, absolutely. Omar doesn't shy away from depicting the violence and chaos that erupts as various factions vie for power. There are bombings, assassinations, brutal crackdowns. The city becomes a battleground, and it's during this tumultuous time that the narrator is forced to confront the true cost of Haroon's ambition.
It's like a crucible for his beliefs, right?
Right. He witnesses firsthand the suffering that Haroon's pursuit of power inflicts upon innocent people. It's a stark contrast to the hope and idealism that initially drew him to Haroon's cause.
And this forces the narrator to make a choice.
Right.
Remain loyal to a man whose methods he increasingly questions, or break free and forge his own path.
It's a moral dilemma that resonates with the reader because it asks us to consider what compromises we ourselves might make in the face of such difficult circumstances.
It's a question that has no easy answers, and that's what makes Angel so compelling.
Right.
Omar doesn't offer simplistic solutions or neat resolutions. He forces us to grapple with these complex issues alongside the characters, and that's what makes this story stay with you long after you finish reading it.
And it's within this complex web of political intrigue, personal relationships, and the exploration of faith and destiny that Omar masterfully weaves his tale. He doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of Afghanistan, but he also highlights the resilience of its people, their capacity for love, for hope, and for enduring, even in the face of unimaginable adversity.
And Omar achieves all of this through his masterful use of symbolism and allegory.
Oh, yeah.
For example, the angel in the title. It's not a literal being, is it?
No, it's more of a representation.
Okay.
A symbol of hope, innocence, and perhaps even the possibility of redemption. It's something that the narrator seems to be searching for throughout the story, even as he's surrounded by darkness and despair.
That's a great point. And what about the recurring motif of the marketplace?
Oh, yeah.
What significance does that hold in the novel?
The marketplace, to me, represents the heart of Afghan society.
Okay.
It's a place of bustling energy, diversity, and commerce, but it's also a place of vulnerability where violence can erupt at any moment.
Oh, wow.
Shattering the fragile peace.
It's like Omar's saying that even in the midst of daily life, in the places where people come together to connect and trade, there's this underlying tension, this sense that everything could change in an instant.
Yeah.
And that's a reality that many Afghans have had to live with for far too long.
Absolutely. And speaking of recurring themes, we can't overlook the importance of faith in the novel.
Okay.
We've already talked about Pir Sahib.
Right.
But how does Omar explore the broader role of faith in Afghan society, particularly in times of conflict and uncertainty?
That's a great question.
It's interesting because he presents a multifaceted view of faith. For some characters, like the narrator's sister, faith is a source of strength and solace, a way to make sense of the chaos and find meaning in the face of loss. But for others, like Haroon, faith plays a less central role. He seems to place more emphasis on political ideology and secular solutions.
So it really depends on the character.
Exactly. And then you have Zarel, who embodies a more mystical and spiritual element that goes beyond traditional religious doctrines.
Interesting.
Omar doesn't present faith as like a monolithic concept. He shows how it can be interpreted and experienced in different ways depending on individual beliefs and circumstances.
It's like he's inviting the reader to consider the role of faith in their own lives. To explore the complexities and nuances of belief without offering any easy answers or definitive judgments. And that's a reflection of his overall approach to storytelling, isn't it?
Absolutely.
He doesn't preach or dictate. He invites the reader to participate in the conversation, to draw their own conclusions, and to grapple with the challenging questions that the novel raises.
And it's important to remember, as we're discussing Angel, that we're exploring one story, one perspective within a nation as complex and diverse as Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking there's like a single narrative that can encompass the Afghan experience.
Especially
after decades of conflict and media portrayals that often lean towards simplification.
Right.
But Omar's novel reminds us that there's this richness and multiplicity to Afghan voices.
I like that.
Each with its own story to tell.
That's a valuable reminder.
Yeah.
So while Angel offers a powerful lens through which to view Afghanistan, it's crucial to remember it's just one facet of a much larger, multifaceted reality.
Precisely. And that's what makes it such a significant contribution to literature. It pushes against stereotypes, encourages deeper understanding, and invites us to engage with the nuances and complexities of Afghan society.
It's a call for empathy.
Yeah.
For looking beyond the headlines.
Absolutely.
And seeing the human faces.
Right.
The individual stories that make up a nation.
Now, before we wrap up,
okay,
I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Okay.
That lingering question of hope versus despair throughout Angel. We see characters grappling with loss, betrayal, and violence. Yet there's also this persistent sense of hope, this yearning for a better future.
It's like witnessing a delicate dance between darkness and light. Where even in the bleakest moments, a flicker of hope manages to break through.
How do you interpret this interplay of hope and despair?
Does Omar ultimately offer a message of optimism or pessimism?
That's a great question. I don't think Omar offers like easy answers or a straightforward resolution.
Okay.
Instead, he shows us both the devastating consequences of conflict and the remarkable resilience of the human spirit. We see characters finding strength in their faith, in their families, and in their unwavering belief in the possibility of a better tomorrow.
So, while acknowledging the harsh realities, it's a story that leans towards hope.
I'd say so. The hope might be subtle, sometimes fragile, but it's definitely there. It's a hope rooted in the enduring strength of the Afghan people, their capacity for love and forgiveness, and their unwavering determination to rebuild their lives and their nation.
Beautifully put, and I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
This deep dive has only scratched the surface of Asif Omar's Angel.
It really has.
But I hope it's sparked a curiosity in you to seek out this powerful work.
Absolutely.
And explore its depths for yourself.
I couldn't agree more. It's a novel that deserves to be read, discussed, and pondered upon. Angel is a testament to the enduring power of storytelling. Its ability to transport us to other worlds, to challenge our perspectives, and to remind us of the shared humanity that binds us all.
It's a story that stays with you.
Definitely.
Prompts reflection and hopefully leaves you with a sense of hope.
Absolutely.
Even amidst the complexities of our world.
I agree.
So if you're looking for a novel that will move you, challenge you, and expand your understanding of the human experience,
I highly recommend it.
I highly recommend adding Angel to your reading list.
You won't regret it.
That's it for this deep dive into Angel.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time.